Deadly blast rocks factory in Jiangsu province. Looking for answers in the underground gas explosions in Kaohsiung. And would signing anti-Occupy Central petition undermine police neutrality?
Hello and a very good evening. At least 68 people were killed in an explosion at an auto parts factory in the eastern mainland province of Jiangsu. More than 180 others were injured in the blast and the subsequent fire that ripped through the plant that supplies parts to General Motors. 5 people, including the factory's senior executives, are now under police custody. Alan Buckner reports.
The explosion happened just after 7:30 this morning in one of the factory's workshops. More than 200 employees were at the site at the time. Officials say rescuers pulled about 40 bodies from the scene, while the others died in hospital. Dozens of the injured suffered severe burns to the head and body. Survivors, many with their clothes burned off, took refuge on wooden platforms outside the factory. Doctors and nurses specializing in burn treatment have been flown in from Shanghai to help attend to the injured. They were taken to nearby hospitals that are being described as overcrowded with patients. The factory is owned by Kunsan Zhongrong Metal Products, a Taiwanese enterprise. Its core business is electroplating wheel hubs that it supplies to GM and other companies. A preliminary investigation shows the blast was set off by the quick combustion of airborne dust particles in the workshop. They could have included powdered metals, such as aluminium, that could be set off by a spark or an overheated surface. President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang have assigned a state councillor to lead a working team to Kunsan to look into the disaster. Workplace safety has been an ongoing problem in China, where regulations are often ignored and workers are poorly trained and ill-equipped to protect themselves from industrial accidents. The site has now been cleared as the investigation continues. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
Across the Taiwan Strait, the death toll from the gas explosions in Kaohsiung has risen to 28. More than 280 others were injured. President Ma Ying-jeou visited the victims as well as emergency workers this afternoon, where he stressed to find out who's responsible for this tragedy. Trevor Lee files this report from Kaohsiung.
Days of heavy rain turned the collapsed road into what looks like a river, making it ever more of a challenge for rescue workers. More bodies and body parts were uncovered this morning. Authorities believe there may still be victims trapped under the rubble. President Ma Ying-jeou arrived in Kaohsiung this afternoon. He visited the injured in hospital and thanked rescue workers for their efforts. Calling it the worst explosion in Taiwan's history, Ma said apart from making sure this never happens again, the government is determined to find out who is responsible. According to initial investigations, LCY Chemical Corp is the most likely culprit, with abnormal pressure in its piping system, reported about 3 hours before the explosions, and tons of gas leaked shortly after that. The company stressed that it will fully cooperate with the probe and will not shirk its responsibility. Several other firms run underground pipes in the area. A number of firefighters were killed in the blasts. Here, family members of one of the victims mourned his death. Residents affected by the blast had been sheltered at a school without air conditioning and sufficient drinking water. But because of the hot weather in Kaohsiung at the moment, those who still can't return home have now been transferred to this school, which has air-conditioned classroom. This affected resident said he feels exhausted, but hopes he can get some rest, now that he is in a slightly more comfortable environment. This woman said she feels indebted to the volunteers, who have been working really hard to look after her. Many of them expressed appreciation for the support of the people across Taiwan during this difficult time. Volunteers have come from all over the island to help out, while donations of food and daily necessities have continued to pour in. Trevor Lee, TVB News, Kaohsiung, Taiwan.
The World Health Organization says the Ebola outbreak in West Africa that's claimed more than 700 lives is spreading faster than the efforts to control the disease. After the meeting with the leaders of the three most affected countries, Liberia, Sierra Leone and Guinea, WHO head Margaret Chan told a summit on Ebola that more help is needed from the international community.
You must support the extraordinary measures and the determination of the three presidents and their countries by providing experts, laboratory capacity, protective clothing, and other resources, including financial resources, to help them to stop Ebola outbreaks.
The West African leaders agreed to take stronger measures to try to control the outbreak and prevent it from spreading outside the region. This Ebola outbreak is the largest since the disease first emerged in Africa nearly 40 years ago.
Israel continues to bombard southern Gaza as the military searches for an officer believed to have been captured by Hamas militants. The ambush yesterday shattered a humanitarian ceasefire that lasted less than 2 hours, dashing any immediate hopes of a longer-term solution to the conflict. James Aiken reports.
Dawn breaks over the Gaza Strip after another night of heavy Israeli shelling. A mosque and a university were among the buildings that took the brunt of the attacks. More than 150 Palestinians have been killed since the Israeli army began shelling soon after a 72-hour ceasefire went into force.
We were 90 minutes into the ceasefire, minding our own business, defending our own positions, when a terrorist came out with a suicide belt, blew himself up, killed 2. Another gunman came out shooting and then abducted one of our officers.
But in a statement, Hamas's military wing said it doesn't know where the 23-year-old soldier is and has lost contact with the militants involved in the clash. Hamas says the soldier is likely dead. The collapse of the ceasefire has triggered disappointment and international condemnation.
I want to make sure that they are listening. If they are serious about trying to resolve this situation, that soldier needs to be unconditionally released as soon as possible.
The United Nations is urging both sides to return to a ceasefire that many had hoped would pave the way for talks in Cairo on a more sustainable truce. But escalation now seems more likely than de-escalation.
I myself have a hard time envisioning how these talks would work right now, because there was a substantive and logical linkage between the 72-hour unconditional humanitarian ceasefire and the attempt to make it more durable by addressing some core issues. And right now, that essential first part isn't there.
Laid on the table.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Congress has rushed through a $225 million bill to support Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system, which has shot down most of the incoming Palestinian rockets in the conflict. The bill now goes to Obama for his signature. James Aiken, TVB News.
And to local news now. Acting Commissioner of Police Cheung Tak-keung says the force is not against officers signing an anti-Occupy Central petition. But as Rani Samtani reports, that's raising concerns police won't treat civil disobedience protesters in a fair manner.
According to the police general orders, officers should not support or participate in political activities. They should avoid any activity which is likely to interfere with the impartial discharge of their duties or give the public the impression that it may affect how they carry out their duties. A number of police officers have already signed the petition organized by the Alliance for Peace and Democracy against Occupy Central. Acting Commissioner of Police Cheung Tak-keung said that does not violate the police general orders, insisting officers have the freedom to express their opinion. Speaking on a radio program today, Cheung made clear if officers are off duty and want to express their personal beliefs against what is likely to be an unlawful act, he doesn't see a problem with it. Occupy Central organizers disagree, saying police shouldn't show their support for or opposition to any group.
Society expects our civil servants remain neutral in political issues, particularly when facing Occupy Central, which is a very controversial issue.
Members of the Civil Human Rights Front said if the police take a side or show support for one group, they fear police officers won't treat them fairly when they take civil disobedience action in the coming future.
The police who signed up for the anti-Occupy Central is clearly agreeing and supporting pro-Beijing claim. And I don't believe that those officers are neutral when they're dealing with participants of civil disobedience. And we fear that this opens a gate for further abusement of power from the police force.
About 20 demonstrators who were arrested in connection with the unauthorized sit-in at Chater Road after the July 1st rally refused to renew their bail and were released unconditionally this week. Zhang stressed that the police have not dropped the case and are still collecting evidence. He said once they complete the investigation, they will decide whether to prosecute them. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
Executive Councillor Bernard Chan has expressed fears a consensus may not be reached on political reform. Meanwhile, the Alliance for Peace and Democracy claims it has collected more than 1 million signatures in its anti-Occupy Central petition. Stephanie Choi has that story.
Legislator Gary Chan of the pro-establishment Democratic Alliance for the Betterment and Progress of Hong Kong, along with a group of district councillors, were in the New Territories to collect signatures against Occupy Central. The Alliance for Peace and Democracy has also now started its online signature campaign. The alliance claims it has already collected more than 1 million signatures from those who signed the petition in person. Across the political divide, a group of Neo-Democrats marched in protest against comments made by Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam that the people of Hong Kong should accept the government's political reform proposal, even though it may not be an ideal one. The group stressed that it will not accept any proposal without civic nomination. Time could now be running out to try to reach a consensus ahead of a decision on political reform by the National People's Congress Standing Committee later this month. Executive Councillor and local NPC Deputy Bernard Chan said today he isn't optimistic about achieving a consensus. He pointed out that the central government will put national security first, even though it's aware that some people in Hong Kong won't be happy with the government's reform package. Chan also believes the composition of the nominating committee can still be discussed after the decision made by the NPC Standing Committee. And he said he has signed the petition against Occupy Central. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
And still ahead in the news tonight. Debate over the amount of household waste tax you'll have to pay. Women-only trains in Thailand aimed at deterring crime. Highlights.
The search for talent takes the judges to Northern Ireland.
We've never had one of those before.
Tonight, Britain's Got Talent, Season 8, at 8 on Pearl.
I mean, really, they will kill anything that can't get away.
Dealing with thieves can drive peaceful creatures to be vicious.
Oh, ow! Oh my God!
Tuesday, Wingxing Photo Supply's 40th anniversary presents Hidden Kingdoms on Pearl Spectacular.
Introducing the Hong Kong Ballet's season premiere, Don Quixote. Staged by Nina Ananyashvili, this must-see ballet features guest artists Matthew Golding and Anna Saigankova. Book now at urbtix.hk.
Puddings are a real way to demonstrate patriotism.
From familiar favourites to the weird and wobbly.
Welcome to Pudding School.
Heston sets up Pudding School. Monday, Heston's Great British Food at 8:30 on Pearl. The annual International Top Flight Volleyball Showdown.